All right, welcome back to Overengineered, the podcast where we ask the question, what's the absolute best way to do things we already have a perfectly acceptable solution for? Today, I am here with Joe Tannenbaum again, and we have a perfectly acceptable podcast called Overengineered, and yet you insist on wanting to start your very own podcast. And so either I'm going to talk you out of it or I'm going to talk you into it. We're going to see what happens.
It feels a little embarrassing, doesn't it? To be like, I should talk and people should listen. Is that, do you think that at all?
I definitely, I didn't do this for like 2 years because of that.
Okay.
This podcast.
So I should hold off for 2 years is what you're saying. I have 2 years before the seed of the idea versus actually implementing the idea. Is that what you're basically saying?
I think I put in the 2 years so that you can do it next week.
Great. Sold. I'm sold. That sounds great.
No, I mean, I do think that there's like sort of an interesting or a worthwhile question around like sort of, whose voices need to be out there. And like, I think it's worthwhile to sort of like ask yourself the questions about like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? For whom am I doing it?
Yeah.
And I think I eventually came to terms with just like, it was very freeing to just kind of be like, this podcast is just for me, like,
sure. Yeah.
And hopefully other people get value out of it. But like, I want to make a space to have these conversations for myself. And I'm not trying to do anything else with that. You know what I mean?
That's kind of how I feel. I feel like my developer friend group has exploded over the last year. I know so many more people, and I was like, how do we take this to the next level? I want to actively have conversations with people and about what they're doing. And I'm that's it. And there's a part of me that's like, well, you can just talk to people and you don't have to publish it. But I think that there's enough people doing enough interesting things that it merits putting out there for the other side of the equation, like the people who are actually doing the thing.
And the podcast, like podcasting is a really convenient format. It kind of gives you structure. It gives you a time and a place.
Yep.
Because there's a chance that people are listening, like you're a little bit more cognizant of what you're saying. You maybe, think through things a little bit more. Like I think it elevates the conversation, it puts a little bit more pressure on in a good way.
People bring a little bit of a different game to having that type of conversation than just like a, hey, let's grab coffee and catch up conversation. And if you're having a conversation about the same thing that you would have been talking about anyway. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah. And there's certainly room for both. Like grabbing a coffee is awesome too, but especially like in the world we are in right now where so many people are, working remote, working from home, working from a place that is, in our case, it's only a couple hours away, but it's still like, I'm not going to be in New York every day, but we can get on Zencaster and chat for an hour right now,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I've been kind of rolling around for a while. And then I was like, yeah, but what is it? Am I just shooting the breeze with somebody? Like, I don't know what that looks like. And then I was listening to actually another podcast. I was listening to Syntax. How dare I'm so sorry. I'm cheating on you with another podcast. But I was on a run and I was listening to Syntax, and Wes was talking about his Hack Week project or whatever. And I was just thinking like, man, I love just hearing the stories about like, I tried this thing. It was a goof around. This is what I took away from it. Next thing. And I was like, I should just do that. That's the angle. I should just do a whole podcast where I just interview people about their side projects, and you can like pull things from the graveyard of your side project folder, or you can say like, this is what I'm working on now, or I noodled with this for 10 minutes. I figured out the thing I wanted to figure out, and this is what I took away from it. Like, I'm interested in all of that. And I think those are fun conversations. It also opens up like, okay, well, what are you interested in? What tickles your brain? What problems are you facing that merited a side project of some? I want to know all that stuff. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the angle I'm going to go with. And I think I'm never, ever, ever going to run out of guests because we all do this. So there's a bajillion. I think you are quoted as saying you could basically be an entire season yourself. So I think,
Oh, I've
you
already
know,
threatened you with what, like 7 or 8 episodes, right?
well, legal action. Yeah, you've threatened me with legal action if you're not the solo guest for an entire season. So
I
my
really
lawyer will
like
be
the
in touch.
idea.
Yeah, I'm into it too. It gets me excited. It's what I want to talk about. It's what I want to hear about from people. So I'm interested in it. Yeah.
Do you think that like this like interest right now was like is coming out of like coming back from Laracon at all? Like just the amount of just too overwhelmed perhaps, but like, the amount of just like getting to interact with other nerds, like talking about things that they're interested in. So much fun. And then you come back and it's like normal life and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
where's my like 4 hours of shouting about event sourcing, Like,
There was a bit of a come down. Like the first week back, I was just like, I was kind of riding high. I was like very energetic and I was
yeah,
like, my brain was on fire. And then I guess it would be, is it 2 weeks out now? Is this the second week out? No, I
it
guess
might
we're
be even
3 out.
more. It's a little while.
Who knows? But yeah, it was a little bit of like, oh, normal life again. Okay. Well, I guess, we're just building CRUD apps and stuff, that's cool. So I guess there is a little bit of like, yeah, I just want to know what people are doing. I want to know what like gets them jazz. And nothing gets you more jazz than a side project because that's your little baby. That's your thing you're working on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you have any thoughts about like format or structure? Have you given that thought at all? Do you want to talk about it? I don't know, but
I don't know yet.
we
I
can
think
workshop.
there are some bits in there. If you don't have a name for it, one of the bits could be let's jazz on a name for a
I
little
love that.
while. How many domains do you own? Because
Oh,
for how many side projects can we get a rough estimate? I'm not really sure yet. I have a side note that's just random thoughts I've had, but we're gonna work that out on the fly maybe a little bit.
yeah. I like that. Everyone has that is kind of like a fun bit. Everyone has like a couple of domains sitting around that like, okay, don't get don't you dare get me started on domains because you'll regret it. But I feel like everyone has a couple of domains in particular that have been like maybe sitting around longer that they're not willing to get rid of.
Okay, so that
It's
was
like,
one of the bits is like, what's your white whale side project? Like, what's the
mm-hmm,
one you can't let go and you return to every once in a while and you rewrite it in the new framework you're using right now? Or like, what
mm-hmm,
is that for you?
yep.
Because we all have one or two of those floating around, and I would love to know what can't you let go of, and what domain have you held on for way too long?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I think those can be two different things too, because it's like, what's the one that you've started and never finished a bunch of times, but also what's the one that you've never been able to start, but you also haven't been able to let go of? Like those are kind of two different questions, right?
Because the domain is so juicy, or like I know what I would build for this and I think it's valuable, and yet I can't even like dive
Right.
in.
I I liked the idea 9 years ago, and I've liked the idea at renewal every year since, but I still
I've liked the
haven't
idea
like
9 exact times. I don't know if I don't know if I have one of those. I don't know if I've held on to a domain that
interesting.
didn't belong to something, that it didn't kick off at all. Do you have
Oh, oh, dozens,
really?
dozens at
Huh.
least. So I use a couple of I'm kind of in between a couple of different domain registrars, but I have enough that I have my domains tagged as either active or just an idea, as well as other tags. But there are yeah, many that are just, I think this is a great idea. Maybe someday I'll build it, but I've never
And
even
you've
like
never put
Laravel
pen to paper
nude
on that.
anything.
That's
Yeah.
wow. Laravel
Yeah.
Nude is a different site. That's a different site.
That's upcoming in
That that
Australia.
tag that tag received an adult content tag. That was the
Oh man. Yeah,
anyway.
like
That's the bit. That's the idea, and I think I'm into it, and I think it could last forever if I wanted to. Because I don't know, especially people who have side projects that are attaching to hardware. I'm fascinated with,
Oh yeah.
I've never done it and I think it's awesome.
The number of like receipt printers that I've seen on my Twitter feed in the last
Yeah.
like 4 months or
Yeah.
whatever, I love it.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you
it's just
see
like
Andrew
Sch-
Skyleman?
Schmellian or yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, Andrew.
just like an hour ago, fired up a dot matrix printer that he's letting people
Yes,
just fire stuff to. And I'm like, yeah,
it's so
dude,
much fun.
that's
So much
awesome.
fun.
Like, great. I love that stuff.
I was talking to Ben Holman the last episode of the episode before about this, and I have been saying like I really want to connect like PHP through a serial interface to something, right? Like I want to do a project where not only am I working with physical hardware, but I'm using PHP specifically to control physical hardware. Because I think a lot of those
Okay.
projects you end up using an Arduino or, some other language that's maybe arguably more suited to it. And
Okay.
that's the right thing to do. But I've just always been curious, like, there's gotta be some some way, some arcane method that's existed in PHP for the last decade and a half that like lets you do that, you know?
Like, what's a good example of that? Like, what are you thinking about? I need
I
something more concrete. I don't know.
that's the thing. I don't know either. I have no idea what it would be. I just think it would be interesting to specifically use PHP like to do something that's not, not over like a network protocol, but is actually like activating pins that are like, like doing some physical thing that's like where you're
You want
really
to
getting down to the
do
low
something
level.
the low level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating. If you figure that out, I'm all ears. Yes, I'm
That'll be
in.
season
Sure.
2.
Yeah. Season 2. We are controlling hardware at the lowest level possible via PHP. Uh, yeah, we'll say that for season 2, and you'll have
Yeah.
all of season 1. That's a lock.
Right.
That's a
Right.
contract. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's already under
We've
contract.
agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. uh um God, I had something for you. I don't know. I was thinking though. Okay, let me pitch you. I'm going to pitch you
Mm,
one of my domains that I never haven't used yet. And
okay,
you tell me if I should renew it next year.
okay.
All right. The domain
This is
is
under idea, so this has never been like
this has
nothing's
never been
happened with it.
touched. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh the idea is SassyWig. Software as a service is what you get. It's such a silly name. And the pitch
software.
is basically a service that handles uh like landing pages, sign up, all the marketing stuff. And you just have basically a single API that you use within your application to determine, is this person a paying customer and on what plan? And you don't have to do any of the like marketing site, any of the newsletter, any of the, e-commerce, SaaS registration, any of that stuff.
Okay, so you're dealing with a hosted API to do all the heavy lifting, and then you implement the app specific stuff
Yeah,
yourself.
you
Is what you're
just build
saying?
the app. Yep.
Okay, so it's
And
almost like hosted auth plus 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 kind of in a way.
plus 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 plus, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
And I think of it as like it's not hosted auth because it would be, but it would be I would think of it more as just like I think a lot of times when I have like a side project, I mean this is a side project that specifically came out of the need of other side projects.
of course.
When I have a side project, the idea of actually like turning it into a viable thing that maybe people would pay for is such a bummer. I just want to build the thing, you know?
Yeah,
And
man.
so,
I hear you.
right, I
I
just
agree.
thought, what if you could just literally like install, like literally compose or install something and there's this middleware and like you don't do anything else, you know? It's like
You just build the
now,
app, and everything
yeah,
else is there
the
for you.
middleware like just checks like a token on the request and then sets up the session. Like makes one API request out to SassyWig when someone like connects to see if that token is valid, and then turns it into just a regular Laravel session, right?
Mhm.
Syncs their account automatically for you periodically. Registers some sort of webhook automatically so that when they make a change on their account, you immediately get that cache bust and get the new account info. I just think it'd be really cool to be able to just offload all of that, because for a lot of things, it really is. It's just one landing page with a sign up and some comparison form at the bottom and a sign up for a newsletter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
there's not much to it.
Right.
And it would let you potentially take like an idea and like see if anyone would pay for it, you know? Like it's not going to be it's not
Yeah.
going to be, for it to be a viable business, you would have to be able to like kind of eject out of it once you proved out the theory.
Right.
Which I don't know
It's sort of for,
exactly
like,
how that would work.
kickstarting something, less so for,
Yeah.
like, an actual product is what you're saying? So it's
Yeah.
like yeah.
I
Look,
don't
I
see
think
using it for a
there's
long time.
right, but then that already trips my, like, "This is weird" thing in my brain. Like, this
Yeah.
is short term, I'm gonna collect a bunch of people in here and do this stuff, and then I'm gonna say, "Peace," and, like, just drop this product that is sort of core to a lot of things about my business immediately. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's odd
That's
to
a
me.
it's
It's
odd.
it's it's good for somebody. I don't think it's good for me. I think I'm what I would call a hard pass on that. But I do understand. I would build that for myself internally in order
Yeah.
to spin up, like you were saying, like all of these. Like that would be amazing to just have like a standard mechanism to just reach for every time I want to like. Because we all know that like, or I don't know. Maybe I should speak for myself. When I build these things out, it's like you solve the core problem and then everything past that core problem, I find to be immensely boring. Like
Yep.
I don't want to do a marketing site. I don't want to deal with like off. I don't want to deal like none of
Yep.
that is interesting to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I did that thing, and that's why they just die by the wayside because I don't want to do the rest of it. I don't want to do the last 10% that is launching the thing. You know?
Yeah, and that's why it's like, because obviously Cashier and Spark and like Breeze and all these things get you a lot of the way there theoretically, but in practice, it's like I don't that it still is a barrier. It undeniably is a barrier, right? There's
Yeah.
something there. And yeah, it's just like
Unless we start selling starter kits for Laravel Sat, I'm just kidding. I would never do
I
that.
I'm going to be honest, I hate starter kits
So do
just
I.
as
I mean,
in
it's not.
general.
Yeah.
What's your take
Well,
on starter kits?
well, I think the vast majority of starter kits are opinionated to the person that started
Yep.
them. So it's like very their world, which is fine and merited, but I don't 99% of the time not what I want. And
Yep.
B, they're not well coded. It's not a great kit and
Yep.
they're not really customizable in a way that's reasonable. So I kind of end up with this thing that's somebody else's vision that I have to adhere. I don't know.
Yep.
I've rolled my own starter kits. I mean, Bellows that I built was my personal starter kit that I could just wire up depending on the project that I needed.
Mhm.
But I tried to make it flexible for everybody, but it's not, it's more of an orchestration tool, less of like a starter kit. It's like, what do I
Mhm.
want my standard project to look like? These are the packages, these are the files that,
Yeah.
that is more appealing to me than plopping a bajillion files, half of which I probably don't actually need in my project, and
Yeah.
then deciding what to do from there. I find that very unappealing. I would never personally grab a starter kit.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a big thing in the JavaScript world in particular. And it was I don't know, just such a turnoff to me when I was doing more JavaScript. Was just like it felt like that was the expected sort of like path, is just like, okay, you're just gonna pick some random person's like Git repo and clone it. And now you're just like kind of bought in to the decisions they've made up until that
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like, because you're not, at a certain point, you're not gonna like get improvements to their starter kit, right? So you don't
No,
get any of the advantages of like someone else has figured things out and they're going to keep figuring things out.
right, right.
Um, but you have all the downsides of now I'm beholden to someone else's decisions, you
And
know?
you're ultimately the one maintaining it. Like you
Yeah.
have to then maintain this app that you might not even understand.
Yeah.
My definition of starter kit for me is Jetstream is a great starter. It gives you the auth, it gives you teams, it gives you like a pretty core set of things that are reasonably customizable uh, out of the box, and then I can start making decisions from. That's as much of a starter kit as I almost ever want.
Yeah.
I want to pull things in. Yeah, I don't know. Starter kits are so personal. That's what it is. It's like they're so personalized to the person who decided to put them out there, and people have bad opinions. Like it's not, it's like the people they're not always the people that should be making those decisions, I should say.
Even if it's not, I mean, I was just
That was
someone just
very
asked
negative. I don't
me.
know why I just decided to just
No.
like dunk on that so hard, but I don't know. It just doesn't look appealing. Yeah.
Someone was asking on the Laracon Telegram chat, like, about package templates, sort of a starter kit for package, essentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And someone asked me about mine, and I was like, you are welcome to use it, but like, just know that I didn't build this for you, right? Like,
Right. Right.
this package template is there so that I can quickly spin up packages for myself. And like, I built it in a way that's pretty generalized. And I think there's some very cool things about how it works. Like, I really, it has like a very cool GitHub action that runs the first, like, when you clone it, and essentially, like, based on your organization and repository name, like, renames all of the like generic stuff into like,
Super slick.
proper composer namespace and stuff. So like, there's some advantages to using it, but like, there's a lot of stuff in there that's just like, I want this specific PHP fixer config in all my projects, so I'm gonna like put it there. It's decidedly not right for most other people, probably.
You're like, I'm not accepting PRs on this. Just a heads up. Like, I will
Just to
not be
be clear,
changing
yeah.
this. Yeah.
You're not coming in here and making me use spaces. I'm using tabs forever.
And that's great, and I respect that. You figured out what you wanted, you figured out what your workflow looked like, and you built something that adhered to that, and now you're moving at the speed of light. I think that's great.
All right, Joe. So should I just let Sassy Wig die? It sounds like maybe I should just. I've held on to it for a number of years. I don't know why.
You've wasted
Oh,
what, $20 a year? I don't know
tens
how
of
much.
dollars.
Tens of dollars. Yeah, I think that one's dying on the vine. I don't think that one's coming
Oh
to light.
no.
Sorry, dude.
All right, all right. That's fine. I have 100 more. Don't worry.
I mean, it fully sounds like a fun wig shop online, like a fun wig e-commerce shop, like
Uh-huh.
hair wig. That's what it sounds like. So
Yeah.
there's your first barrier to entry.
Or you lean into it, and that's the logo. It's just like a super sassy
It
wig.
has to be the logo if you're going to do this. I think legally it has to be. It doesn't make sense any other way.
All right. So what's a side project? Do you have any side projects that you've been working on that aren't terminal nonsense?
Yeah, yes, a bajillion. I have a side project that actually got shut down this year, which had been running for a long time and making tens of dollars a month for years and years and years. But I had an actor website builder
Mm,
for the longest time. Actors would come to me and say, like, can you build me a website? And I'd be like,
yeah.
that's really silly. I don't want to, like, no, I don't want to build you a
Mm,
website, because it's like you need the same things. You can do those same things anywhere. But they found the existing solutions too confusing. That was the
yep.
constant refrain. So I built a CMS that was very specific to what they needed. Got, I don't know, a couple dozen people on there over the years. It's like nothing. But after a while, it just, the maintenance of at all, which was barely happening, was not worth it. And I decided to drop it. So that was one. My personal white whale, which I'm not building mostly because there is a fairly large barrier to entry, which is basically, I have this thing. It's a domain I've held on to for a very long time. It's Tidy Inbox. Okay.
Mm, good
So
one.
yeah, this is a personal problem, and I don't know how universal a problem it is, but it's the way I like to do things, where I love Gmail filters,
Mhm.
but I want to run Gmail filters as like a cron job. And I want to be able to
Okay.
like run specific searches that allow me to then take actions on those searches on the schedule that I determine. So, for example, this is a SPS shipping notification email. I don't need that for more than probably 5 days. So if I see one in my inbox that's over 5 days old, you can delete it. Uh, the one that I use quite commonly is if I star messages and they're in my inbox, I want you to mark them as unread again at the beginning of every day. So they just pop back to my attention even more. So
Oh,
there's
interesting. I like that.
these little workflows that, and so at first, as you should, I built a Google sheet and I had all these rules in it. And then I wrote a Google script that embedded in the sheet that did this for me. And it worked
Interesting.
great and it did the job. But I was like, I would love to generalize this into something anybody could sign up for, find your own rules, connect it to your Google and
Mm.
roll. Connect it to your
Oh
Google
my God.
is the tough bit. That's
Yeah.
the barrier to entry. Is like I think that process is I've dealt with the Apple, Google through Play Store and App Store by building apps, and that is unfun, I would say. I mean, it's really unfun. And I hear that the Google app approval process for like integrations into stuff like Gmail is a little stringent. And like I don't really know what that looks like. And I don't know what it's like a lot of work. This is like a not casual, project. So
Right.
I don't even know what the interest is, but I know I would use it all the time and I would be very happy with it. But yeah, that's been the white whale that I returned to. I've rewritten it probably 4 times over the years. And, you know, I came
Yeah.
up with
I
my own
mean,
sort of like Boolean search structured thing that adheres to the Google Gmail search, advanced search. I've built the Boolean interface, but where it's add a condition, nest a
yeah.
condition. Like I've built that 100 times over at this point.
Oh my God. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Is it your favorite? It's kind of fun. There is something fun and sort of recursive about that is enjoyable.
Well, it's just, I mean, it tickles all the right things because it's like I am building a thing that can do anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
It's the
I'm
most
trying
flexible
to
thing.
get as close to a like universal interface as possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that is what like a rule builder essentially is. It's just like how can I make this as like flexible as possible, like with all the nesting and the ands versus the ors and the like different comparison operations and like all that stuff. Yeah,
And
it's
also,
it's a fun space to be in.
when you're searching on specific fields, you offer the correct field type for those fields, which is also very satisfying for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
It does tickle the brain where you're like, oh, you're looking for a date. Let me offer you a date picker and not have
Yep.
it's like stuff like, or like a drop down of your labels because you're comparing against labels. So let me just offer you the labels so you don't have to type
Yep.
them. It's just silly things like that are so simple, like bring you like a tiny amount of joy to my heart. Like when I implement them, it just feels like the right kind of magic or convenience. There's something lovely there.
I wouldn't say they're simple, but they are very
Well,
satisfying. Yes.
when you offer somebody something that they're expecting and they're not even thinking about it to expect it, like they're
Yeah.
just like,
Okay.
this
Simple
is
in that way. Yes.
in that in simple from the user's perspective,
Yeah.
complex from behind the scenes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's another thing about the rule builder is just like it is a UI that most people kind of know what to expect. And if you get it right, they will find it wholly unremarkable, right?
Exactly.
But
Yes.
the work to get there is so all encompassing. Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's an
so
interesting.
satisfying to get right. Like
Yeah.
when you're interacting with it and it gets to that point, which I've
Yep.
now done like probably 4 times, I'm like, yeah, there it is. That feels good. That feels right.
So
Yeah.
if you're working within the constraints of the Gmail filtering stuff, why not
Mhm.
just use Gmail filters?
Clarify? What do you mean?
Well, if your like logic builder is kind of working within the constraints of the existing Gmail filtering, um, you know, uh, Boolean logic,
Yeah.
couldn't you just put that like write that filter in Gmail and just run it in Gmail?
Yes. Yes. You're saying don't build the builder, like search in Gmail for what you want and then plop that search into the the
Oh,
app?
no, no, no. I'm just saying like if your app's rule building logic is kind of like a subset or equivalent to the Gmail rule logic,
Hmm.
right? Is that what you're saying? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
So, okay, let me say it back to you. What you're saying is there's when you like search in Gmail, there's that advanced drop down with like all the stuff you can do. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, there's that advanced thing, and there's like, keywords and rules around parentheses and pluses and all that stuff. Like,
Right, right, right.
um,
So, right. So you're saying
and
should I
like,
utilize something that they're doing in my
no, no,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess like, I think I'm saying like Gmail's filters like already do all that stuff, right? So if I wanted to say, but I guess, yeah, like, can't I go into Gmail and set a filter that's like, if the message is starred and is read and is older than 1 day, mark it as unread? No, you can't do
No,
that.
filters only work on incoming messages as the message comes in. So
Oh.
I want to run this
Oh, okay.
once
Okay.
a
Well,
day,
that's
once every 5 minutes, twice a day, every day. I want to run it like a cron job, but I want to use it in the
interesting.
style of filters. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. That makes, yeah. I mean, God, that would be awesome.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
building it.
build it. Yeah. Have you ever used the app Maelstrom?
No, that sounds so familiar though. What is that?
It's pretty cool. It connects to your inbox. I think it was originally Gmail only, I think, but I think now you can do like Office 365 and all of them. But it essentially just like has a ton of different heuristics where it's like, okay, you have 700 emails from like this mailing list. Like, do you want me to just archive those? Or
Mm.
like you have 10,000 emails from this one sender that are still in your inbox. Like, do you want to just archive those? Like, it just has a bunch of different ways to just look at the aggregate status of your inbox and just offers to archive big bulk chunks of it. It's
Smart.
not the same thing, but every once in a while. Back
It's
when
sort of tangential. Yeah, I get the connection though. It's the same.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I used
Things you
to
may not see
try
at a
to
glance.
get my inbox tamed, and now I just turn off the number on everything and just accept that it is whatever it is.
I mean, same. But this is part of the reason I would like to have. I'll miss things. I would like to have things resurface that are inherently important, or that I want to clear the
Yeah,
noise, but
yeah,
it's so noisy. It's so noisy.
yeah. There are some interesting apps that have been trying to do this, and I tried. I want to say it's called Airmail or something like that. One of them
Yeah, I
that
did
like,
airmail for a long time. Yeah.
and it's neat, but I ended up finding myself like, it was just clunky enough that I ended up kind of, I don't know, um, just not enjoying using the app. The functionality was very cool. It was
Yeah.
just like, okay, you're giving me Gmail shortcuts, but they're not quite right. And
Right.
every time I hit Y to archive and you haven't implemented that, or like, J and K don't always go up and down, but sometimes they
Yeah.
do, like little things like that just started to nag me. And yeah,
Every
I
desktop client I've ever used has just enough friction that makes
yep,
me go, "Well, I'd rather just do this straight in Gmail." And then they also, create these like wackadoo folders in my Gmail that I don't. It's like airmail in brackets slash snooze because it's their
yep,
snooze mechanism, not like the,
yep,
and I
yeah,
that stuff that's not for me.
yeah.
I want the more quote unquote native experience of Gmail if I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the white whale. That's the one I'll probably always come back to and tinker with every once in a while. I think about it all the time.
That's fun. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
Um,
see.
what do you think that you will have you any thoughts about like, are you going to try to aim for like, do you want to do 30-minute episodes or do you want to just like talk until you're done? Like,
I think it's probably about a 30-minute episode. I want it to be pretty get in and get out, but valuable in between. I want to know what were the hard parts? Why did you give up? Why did it succeed? And most importantly, like, what did you take away? Was it that you learned Go from this? Or was it that, oh, this API is like a monster to work with and these are the reasons why? I just want to know what came out of it. That
Yeah.
to me is almost more interesting than the side project. Is like, what little nugget did you take away that you'll carry to the next thing? That's
Right.
fascinating to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember if I've talked about this on the podcast, but like, I've been thinking about this idea of like, I have this very visual idea, which is obviously great for a podcast. And I haven't quite figured out how to represent it. In my mind, it works visually, but I haven't actually been able to make the graphic yet. But
Okay.
I have this idea of if you're looking at something in like 2D space and it's just a line and you see a start and a finish, and
Okay.
your experience is going from start towards finish and then stopping and going back and forth and never making it to that dot that is finish.
Okay.
That can be our experience as developers. You start to feel bad about starting a bunch of things and never finishing them. The idea that I want to kind of convey is I'm trying to think of that as a spiral and not a line. That if you expand that experience into like 3D space, as it were, that you're actually spiraling upwards towards more capacity and more proficiency and more knowledge.
Yeah.
And like it's only if you kind of look at it in just like a single, like on a single plane, that it looks like, sort of a waste of time.
Yeah. The way I haven't envisioned it that way, but when you say that, and if you kept it 2D, in my mind, that line just keeps getting longer and longer because you always know more, right? So, like, that same project that you did that you never finished 10 years ago and took you 4 days would probably take you an hour nowadays because you're just so much further in that journey. But like the finish line, that goalpost just keeps moving because you just keep learning more. So there's no finish. When are you finished with software development? There's infinity things to learn, right?
Yeah.
And especially as it progresses, I can't even see the line. I don't even know where the finish line is. It's not visible from where I'm sitting. And I think I mean, for me, that's why I love doing this. That's why I think a lot of people love doing this is because uh, you can just keep growing and you can just keep figuring this out. And there's always more problems to solve. And the spiral is interesting. I like that. Although I thought you meant at first spiraling down, and I was like, oh God, I hope not. Like that's depressing. But yeah, I guess the spiral, like you're growing up and it keeps going. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole deal. If I had to
Yeah.
do a job where I had it figured out and I was just doing that job every day, I don't know what my life would look like. That would be a tough eight
No, for
hours a day.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit on Twitter, but like it's so relevant. Like, I think the rule builder that right, like I'm sure that the fourth rule builder that you built was significantly better than the first, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
like
Yeah.
even if you've scrapped it 4 times, like there may come a time when you build the rule builder that is like exactly what you need for the project that you're working on. And
Yep.
you'll have a really solid sense of how to build it. And you'll have all those things that you didn't like so much about the last implementation that you can fix this time around. Yeah, I think about that a lot. The thing that I had said on Twitter that I think about is just this idea that this approach to building software where if you can't finish something within the rule is that you throw the entire thing away and
Yeah.
start again the next day with slightly better scope, slightly smaller, a slightly better idea how to approach it. And like you just keep on doing that until you can get it done in the day.
Hmm.
Um and that idea has always really been I've never done it, but it's always been really interesting to me, and I can see inherently why someone would propose that approach, because 100% I have things that like I've taken stabs at, yeah, a dozen times over a dozen years, and each time maybe what I come to doesn't feel quite right, but I know I'm heading in a good direction for it. Or like in the case of a project that I finished a couple years ago, I remember just having this experience of it being something that I had been thinking about for probably 7, 8, 9 years, like, sort of just mulling it over and
Yeah.
maybe taking, like, an hour and a half to 5 hour stabs at just, like, sort of fiddling with it and then just, like, just walking away from it knowing, like, "No, this I'm not there yet."
I'll never
And
look
then,
at that
like
again. Like, that's
yeah,
done to me. Yeah, yeah.
1 week, I just sat down and it, like I had that experience of it just, like, flowing out of me, you know what I
Oh, it's the
mean? And it was
best.
just
It's
like,
the
it came
best.
out,
Yeah,
it was perfect,
yeah.
quote, unquote "perfect," but, it just came out and it was exactly what I wanted, and I know that that experience, like, it wasn't like it just came to me in a dream, right?
Right,
I had
right.
been working on it for almost a decade, thinking about it,
Yeah. It had
thinking
been cooking
about
for a
yeah,
very long time, and now it came
yeah,
out fully formed. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and side projects, I think, are a good way to, like, sort of enact that experience, like, if you because you might not be able to do that, like, on your main gig.
right.
Either, the place you work doesn't sort of make space for it, or the project that you work on doesn't kinda support it or whatever it is. So, a lot of times you have to kinda take it into your own hands.
I do that sort of cooking a lot. I won't even let myself code sometimes. I do this a lot on runs. I code in my head on runs all the time. Like, I'm literally like, "It's this, then it's this," and I'm envisioning like pseudo-ish code, but like actual code at some level. And
Okay.
like, looking at the branches and like trying to figure out like, okay, if I did this, then there's this, then there's this, and you kind of map it out. And then I just let that sit for like a day. And then I
Mhm.
redo it on the next run. And inevitably on the next run, I go, oh, but that doesn't work if I do this. So I need to like blah, blah, blah. And I'll switch that out. And I do this maybe 4 or 5 runs in a row. And it's at the point where it's like mentally working, then I go, okay, well, now let's write some code. And that code like cruises out of me. That code is like,
Interesting.
I don't know why I like working that way. And I like thinking it through, not looking at a screen a lot. Like really, I really enjoy that. There's something very satisfying to me about that.
Huh.
You're looking at me like I am a lunatic,
No.
but
No, not at all. That
but
is
I
really
it's
fascinating to me.
yeah, it's the way I don't know. It's the way I like to think about hard problems is actually most of the time not looking at the screen. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious. This is gonna be an exercise for you and for the listener. So, okay,
Oh,
close
no.
close your eyes.
Okay.
Picture a table and picture a ball on the table and then a hand reaching out and pushing the ball off the table. Okay? All right, now
Okay.
open your eyes and tell me what color was the ball?
It was red.
Okay. Yep. So, there are sort of 2 distinct experiences of that exercise. Either you know with certainty what color the ball was, or you have no idea what color the ball was.
Oh,
And I am in the other camp. When I, quote, unquote, "visualize" something, it's more thinking about the idea of the thing. I don't really see pictures in my brain.
fascinating.
And so, the idea of, like, trying to actually imagine real code is very foreign to me. That's what that look was.
Wow. That's fascinating. Do you have wait, so but you have abstract pictures or not no pictures, there's no visualization at all?
It's not yeah, it's just not really it's not, it's just a thought. I don't know how to describe it because it's just a thought. It's I can think about a table with a ball on it, but, like, if you ask me what color the ball is, the ball is just the idea of a ball on a table being pushed off by a hand, like, it's just the idea of the thing.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I actually used to I think I don't know, is it synesthesia when you associate colors with things? Is that what it is?
Oh,
Is that what
maybe, I'm not sure, yeah.
okay, there's a word for it. I think that's the word. I've done that for a very long time where I used to do tap. I used to teach tap dance
Yeah.
in high school. And so I was tapping a lot and I would associate subconsciously colors with the different things we were doing. And so as we were doing a routine or something, it's like a light show in my head. But I'm not
Interesting.
thinking like this is red, this is yellow, this is green. It's just sort of like how my brain was firing while the action was going on.
Right. This is a red thing, right?
Yeah, and I
That
didn't
was what it
think
is.
about it
Interesting.
until somebody talked about that, and I was like, "Oh, I do that." I didn't even like so I wonder if it's associated with that too, because like specifically it was like a red ball on the table and then this like semi-giant hand pushing the ball towards me off the table. But that's fascinating. I
I
do you hear a voice in your head? Do you talk to yourself?
I this is the other one that is kind of
Aw,
a line between people. I don't have an internal monologue. Do you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think it's the only reason why I can do this weird coding in my head because I'm like talking to myself in my head.
Yeah, I have no idea what that experience is. I have this conversation with people from time to time because it's like you're so distinctly on one or the other side of both of those things that like the idea of another person having a different experience is so foreign. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know. Yeah, it's like I can't even comprehend what okay. So when you think about like okay, when you're having like a memory, when you're remembering something, is there a visualization associated with that or it's still pretty abstract or it's
Yeah, I'm just it's really it's very conceptual. It's like
huh,
I can remember a thing. But it's like it's a memory, it's a different thing. I don't know. It's just a different
man,
experience of it. Yeah.
I'd love to tap into that beautiful brain of yours and see what's going on. I'm so intrigued. That's awesome.
I
Wow.
know that I'm in the minority on both of those.
Are you?
I think most people have an internal monologue. I believe that's true. And I think most people visualize specifically. I don't think that there's any specific research in it, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that I read that that's the majority. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But yeah, so when you were talking about running and picturing code, I was just sitting here thinking like, what would that even look like? I have no idea how you would do that. Like for
Uh It looks
yeah,
like I guess, like, it looks like my editor. It looks
you've
like
got a
code
little
with, like
editor in your
yeah,
brain.
I've got a little editor
That's
in my
so
brain, I
funny.
guess. I
That's
guess.
so funny.
Yeah, I guess that's what it looks like.
That's I mean, it's cool. I mean, I think it's funny because I think that people I this is me just like making this up. I have no authority to say this, but I think that people have the same process but just different experiences of it.
Oh, yeah.
I can think about code. I can think about how
I
I'm going
hope
to solve
so.
a problem. And I can be intentionally pondering like how I'm going to solve a specific problem. But it's just like my experience of it is much more in the abstract. It's not specific code. It's just like the ideas of approaches, I guess, is how I would describe it. You know, like I can
Yeah.
imagine, like, well, I could either take this approach here or that approach, but it's not like I'm picturing the code. It's just like I'm thinking, like, the difference between a match statement and like multiple if statements. Like, I know what those two things are, right? Those two ideas are. I can't, like, if I try no, I actually can't picture them. That's a little bit disturbing. I feel like
You can't picture,
I want to
like, the
say
word
that
if?
if I try hard, I can, but I literally can't. That's actually that's this is the first time I'm realizing this, Joe, and it's a little freaking me out. I
I
can't
don't know.
picture the
Because
word
I'm on
if.
the other
No.
side of the table, I don't know. I can't imagine that experience. It is unfathomable to me, and it
What
is almost, like, concerning. Like, I'm like like, is Chris okay? Like, is there
the funny thing is it's the same for me. It's like how
I
does a
know, but I
person
know I'm right is the
survive?
difference. You know what I
How
mean? Like,
how
I
is it possible to go through life with a voice in your head? I can't imagine that. Like, that would be so distracting. I can't even
Well,
begin
I'm
to imagine
in
what that's like.
control of the voice at some level. It's not like it's, sometimes it's a little chatty, but I'm the one sort of thinking the thoughts.
Uh, I don't know.
Okay, wow.
It's just really funny.
We
All
are
right, well,
different
this has
people is
been
the moral of this story.
the brain tangent. Yeah. Oh, how do we even it's yeah. So jogging picturing code. That's so funny. Yeah.
It's effective for me. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot to be said for like walking away from something and like taking some time. I find that like while I will like actively think about things, I think that for me I rely on my subconscious a lot more. I'll like just let it go and walk away from it and
Yeah,
like
yeah. Sleeping is huge. Just sleep
yeah,
on it. Like
yeah,
at some point it'll kind of pop in. Your brain will be working on that in the background and it'll come through. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like jolts out.
Yeah. And also, like we said earlier, just wiping the slate clean, just starting fresh
Yeah,
because you might be just too intertwined, right? Like it's just too, you've locked yourself into this one way of doing it, or you're kind of lost in the weeds a little bit. And just clearing the slate and going, okay, if I just started this over again with the knowledge I have now, even if it's right away, it's
yeah,
gonna be better, and you're gonna
for
end up
sure.
in a different place, and that always is effective for me.
I just had such an interesting experience of that. I was up against a problem with verbs. There's one feature that has been sitting around and I haven't quite landed on the way to solve it. And there was just like this little thing that was bugging me. And all of a sudden I just had this moment of like, "Oh my god, this approach is just absolutely totally wrong. We need to like trash it." And it was just really interesting to notice that like the reason why the approach was wrong was because it was adjacent to another problem where that approach was absolutely right.
Yeah.
So it just got caught up in, okay, we're doing it that way for the one thing. So we're
Yep.
going to do it that way for the other thing. In hindsight, it's like, oh my God, this is obviously not the right way to do this thing. Like, the other approach is much simpler and solves almost all the problems that I was running into. Uh, but it was just like really interesting to look back and see, yeah, my brain just got stuck on one
Yep.
idea and
Yep.
just couldn't see the obvious better solution.
So,
Yeah.
so often it's just valuable to say, well, what if this is completely wrong? Like,
Yep.
assume that this is completely wrong. Where do we go
Yep.
from, like, how do we start over? Where do we go from here? That's a super effective question to ask when you're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
even if you're not stuck, like I think sometimes the risk is even worse when you like are just kind of like barreling down the like highway,
Yeah.
just not
Just doing it
like
wrong the whole way.
well, no, when you're like just doing it, you have a solution, you're just doing it and it's fine. Sometimes that is even worse than being stuck because you're just
Yeah.
like you're just you're just doing it wrong and not thinking about it. Like if
Yep.
you stopped and let yourself be stuck for a minute, you'd come to the solution right away.
Totally.
But
But
you're
if you
not,
keep muscling through, you'll never get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's funny. Ugh.
Oh,
All right,
man.
so when's the first episode of Side Projects coming out? Come on. Like,
I think I'm
September
gonna.
20th or
What are you talking about? I
this
think
episode probably won't even be up by September 20th, so
um, I think I'm gonna take a week and like try to iron out like what it looks like and what a loose
yeah.
structure looks like. I'm not gonna overthink it a lot. I just want to have fun conversations. And the fact that people are coming with things that they're enthusiastic about, I think will take care of itself a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
for
But
sure.
yeah, so I'm gonna give it a week, mull it over, go on some runs, figure it out, and then yeah, I think of the week after that, I'm gonna pick a couple people. I think you're gonna be one of them if you're down for it, and we're
For
gonna
sure.
we're gonna talk
Dude,
about
I
some
have so many
side
side projects
projects.
that like are like so interesting to me and I would happily talk about for ages. You literally are gonna have to kick me off.
Not a problem. Well, I will. I'm not bashful about that.
Do you one thing this just popped in my head, like I always have a song stuck in my head. That is one thing. Do you?
I have rhythms stuck in my head all the time. I'm
Interesting.
always. It's like to my wife's dismay, I'm always drumming on something, or like, it's
Yes.
constant, and she has to sometimes be like, hey, can you chill for a second? I'll be like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't realize it was happening.
Yep.
It's just always rhythms in my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
get yelled at a lot for like sort of humming or singing without knowing that I'm doing it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, there we go. One
There's
way that our
there's the
brains are
overlap.
alike. Yeah.
There's the Venn diagram, the center of that Venn diagram. Dude, this was a
Well,
pleasure. Thank you for
this has been
having me
so much
on.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
we'll have to check in a little while and find out how things are going.
Sounds good.
And yeah, I don't know. Anything I do the whole I'm supposed to do the like whole is there anything you want to plug or anything that like all that stuff. You got anything for me?
Yeah, I got.
You're
No, I'm
going
gonna
to
plug the podcast. I'm gonna plug the new
yeah,
podcast.
the new podcast that
I
doesn't
think it's gonna
exist
be
yet.
called Side Project. I think I like that. It's simple.
Are you
Side. Yeah. Good.
you're going to Laricon AU, right? Is that your
Yes.
next so
Yes.
you'll go see Joe Laricon AU?
Good day. Good
Yeah.
day. That didn't sound
Good
right coming
day.
out. Good day. There we go. I'm looking forward. That'll be a good time. It'll be fun.
Nice. All right, man.
Yeah.
Well, until next time.
Sounds good. See you later, man.
See ya.